There are moments that don't look important from the outside. A younger person smiles at you a little longer than expected, waits before walking away, sends a message that doesn't really need a reply, yet somehow hopes for one anyway. Most people would call it a crush, but sometimes it isn't that simple. Sometimes what you're seeing isn't just attraction. It's the quiet beginning of someone rearranging their entire emotional world around one person, around you. And if you've ever wondered whether someone younger could truly feel something that deep, stay with me, because there's a part of this almost nobody notices. Before we go any further, if these conversations help you understand people, and maybe even understand yourself a little better, consider subscribing. It helps this community grow without interrupting what really matters here. Now, I want you to picture something. It's late. You've replied to their message with only 3 words. Nothing romantic, nothing dramatic. Yet somehow, they stay online. Not typing, not leaving, just there. Most people assume that's confidence disappearing. Sometimes it is, but often, it's someone hoping you'll say one more thing before they finally go to sleep. Not because they need entertainment, because your attention has quietly become part of how their evening feels. That's where many men misunderstand younger people. They often expect louder emotions, big confessions, grand gestures, constant excitement. Instead, real attachment usually begins in very ordinary moments. The way someone remembers a joke you forgot making. The way they notice your mood before you mention it. The way they become strangely happy after the shortest conversation. None of these prove love. Of course they don't. People are different. Some express affection openly. Others simply enjoy feeling close to someone. But when these small moments begin collecting together, they can become something much deeper than either person expected. And that depth can surprise the younger person most of all, because they weren't planning it either. I've spoken with many people over the years who described almost the same experience. It wasn't lightning. It wasn't obsession. It felt more confusing than exciting. One woman described it this way. I kept looking for reasons not to like him. Notice that. Not reasons to. Reasons not to. Age differences, different lifestyles, friends who wouldn't understand. Everything logical was pointing one direction. Yet emotionally, she kept drifting back. That doesn't mean logic disappears. It doesn't. Healthy people usually notice those questions. They think about timing, life experience, compatibility. They wonder whether the connection can survive outside the excitement of possibility. But feelings don't always arrive after receiving permission. Sometimes they arrive first, then spend weeks asking for acceptance. Maybe you've seen this without realizing it. A younger person who suddenly becomes quieter around you. Not because they've lost interest, because now every word feels important. They're no longer speaking casually, they're listening to themselves while speaking, wondering, did I sound stupid? Did he notice I was nervous? Why do I care this much? That inner conversation can become exhausting and strangely beautiful, because caring always makes us vulnerable. Even the most confident person becomes uncertain when someone begins to matter. That's something people rarely admit. Confidence doesn't erase vulnerability. Often, real feelings create it. There's another moment that fascinates me. It happens after you've spent time together. Nothing extraordinary happened. Maybe coffee, maybe a walk, maybe 20 ordinary minutes talking about work, music, family. Then they get home, and suddenly the evening feels different. The room hasn't changed. Their life hasn't changed. But somehow, everything feels warmer because your voice is still echoing in their mind. They replay tiny moments. The smile you almost didn't notice. The pause before you answered. The way you laughed unexpectedly. Little details. Tiny details. The kind no one remembers unless someone has begun touching something much deeper inside them. But this is where almost every man makes the same mistake. He assumes stronger feelings always become easier to recognize. Ironically, the opposite often happens. The deeper the emotion becomes, the harder it is to hide naturally. And the first sign isn't usually what you think. It isn't the compliments. It isn't the texting. It isn't even the jealousy. It's something much quieter. Something that begins changing the way they see their own future. And once that shift begins, nothing between the two of you feels quite as ordinary anymore. There's a question that quietly appears long before anyone says, "I love you." It doesn't arrive as words. It arrives as imagination. Not fantasy, not daydreaming for hours. Just little flashes. They're standing in line for coffee and suddenly wonder what you would order. They hear a song and think, "He'd probably laugh at this." They pass a bookstore and almost send you a picture before stopping themselves. Not because it's important, because somehow you've started living inside ordinary moments. That's when emotions begin changing shape. At first, attraction asks, "Do I like being around this person?" Later, attachment starts asking something completely different. What would my days feel like without them? Those are very different questions, and they lead people to very different places. A lot of men expect love to announce itself loudly. Flowers, confessions, long messages at midnight. Sometimes that happens. But often, love becomes visible through consistency. Someone younger who used to reply whenever they remembered. Now they remember because it's you. Someone who never noticed dates. Now they remember exactly when you mentioned your interview, your family visit, that appointment you almost forgot yourself. You didn't ask them to remember. They simply did. Because attention follows emotional investment. That doesn't prove lifelong love. It doesn't mean every thoughtful gesture carries deep meaning. Some people are naturally caring. Some simply enjoy making others feel appreciated. But when care becomes personal, it begins to look different. They aren't kind to everyone the way they're kind to you. The details become specific. Maybe you once mentioned that you skip breakfast. A week later, they casually ask if you've eaten. Not in a controlling way, almost absent-mindedly, as though your well-being quietly settled into their own routine. That kind of care doesn't usually happen overnight. It grows, slowly, almost invisibly. And here's something many younger people never expect. The more they care, the less impressive they want to seem. That sounds backwards, doesn't it? People assume affection makes someone try harder to look perfect. Sometimes. But genuine emotional closeness often does something else. It makes people tired of pretending. They stop rehearsing every sentence. They stop trying to sound interesting every minute. Instead, they accidentally reveal the messy parts, the insecurity, the strange habits, the stories they normally keep hidden. Why? Because somewhere inside they begin hoping, if he knows the real me, will he still stay? That's one of the quietest forms of vulnerability, and it's easy to miss if you're only looking for obvious signs. Imagine this. You're sitting together after dinner. Conversation slows. No one rushes to fill the silence. Neither of you reaches for your phone. Nothing exciting is happening. Yet neither person feels uncomfortable. Do you know why moments like that matter? Because attraction often needs excitement. Connection doesn't always. Real emotional safety often sounds like silence. Comfortable silence. The kind where nobody feels pressured to perform. Ironically, many people mistake calm for boredom, especially when they're young. Movies teach them that love should always feel intense, always dramatic, always uncertain. Real life often whispers instead. It says, I can finally stop pretending for a little while. That feeling can become incredibly powerful. And when someone experiences it with one person, they naturally begin protecting that connection. Not possessively, not perfectly, just carefully. You might notice they hesitate before cancelling plans with you, or they apologize for something small that most people would ignore, not because they're afraid of you, because disappointing you suddenly matters more than it used to. Think about that. We don't become careful with people who mean nothing. We become careful with people whose opinion has found a place inside us. There's another moment I wish more men noticed. It usually happens after a disagreement. Not a huge argument, just a misunderstanding. Maybe your tone sounded colder than you intended. Maybe they pulled away without explaining why. Now here's where everything changes. Someone who only enjoys attention often disappears when things become uncomfortable. Someone who is becoming emotionally attached usually struggles with leaving. Even if they need space, part of them is still searching for a bridge back. They're replaying the conversation, wondering whether they misunderstood, wondering whether you misunderstood, looking for a reason to repair instead of replace. Again, this doesn't happen in every relationship. People respond differently to conflict. Past experiences matter. Personality matters. Timing matters. Human emotions are rarely simple. But when someone begins imagining you as part of their emotional future, walking away doesn't feel as easy as it once did. And that's when another, much deeper fear quietly appears. Not the fear of rejection, something far more personal. The fear that you might never realize how much space you've already started taking up in their heart. That fear rarely sounds the way people imagine. It isn't always, "Please don't leave me." More often, it sounds like silence, a message typed, then erased, a phone picked up, then placed back down, a smile that hides a question they don't know how to ask. Because once someone begins caring deeply, every small risk suddenly feels much bigger. Not because they're weak, because now there's something to lose. And if that person is younger, the feeling can be even more confusing. They may have experienced attraction before. They may have had relationships. They may have believed they understood what love felt like. Then they meet someone who doesn't just make their heart race, someone who makes them feel seen. That changes everything. You'd be surprised how many people don't fall in love because someone is the funniest, the richest, or the most exciting. Sometimes they fall because, for the first time, they don't feel like they have to perform. Imagine this. You're sitting across from each other after a long day. They're talking about something completely ordinary, work, family, a mistake they made earlier that week. Halfway through the story, they stop. They look at you for a second, almost as if they're checking your face, not to see if you're impressed, to see if you're still there, still listening, still interested. It's such a tiny moment that most people miss it, but emotionally, it can mean everything. Because deep attachment often grows through one simple experience repeated over and over again. I showed you a little more of myself, and you didn't pull away. That feeling builds trust in ways grand romantic gestures never can. And trust, real trust, has a strange effect on attraction. It softens it, not weakens it, softens it. The excitement is still there, but now there's something underneath. A quiet confidence. The kind that says, "I don't have to chase every second of your attention because I believe you'll come back." Ironically, that's when many men become uncertain. They notice fewer dramatic texts, less constant reassurance, fewer emotional highs, and they wonder, did her feelings fade? Sometimes they did. That happens. People change. Life changes. But sometimes, the relationship hasn't become colder, it's become safer. There's a difference. When someone no longer feels they must prove themselves every day, their affection often becomes quieter. Instead of saying, "Do you still like me?" they ask if you've eaten. Instead of sending 5 messages, they send one thoughtful one. Instead of trying to impress you, they simply want to share their day. It's easy to overlook those changes because they don't feel dramatic. Yet in many healthy relationships, that's exactly what emotional closeness begins to look like. There's something else I've noticed. Something people rarely admit out loud. A younger person who truly loves someone often begins comparing every new experience to them. Not on purpose, it just happens. A funny story becomes, "I can't wait to tell him." A difficult day becomes, "I wish he were here." A beautiful place becomes, "He'd love this view." Without realizing it, they stop experiencing life as only their story. You begin appearing inside the way they picture the world. That's a quiet shift, a powerful one. And maybe the most beautiful part is that it doesn't ask for attention. It simply grows, like roots beneath the ground. invisible, until one day you realize how much they were holding together. But there is a side of this that almost nobody prepares you for. Loving someone deeply doesn't only create warmth, it also creates fear. Not because love is dangerous, because love gives another person the ability to affect your emotional world in ways no stranger ever could. A delayed reply suddenly feels longer. A distracted conversation feels heavier. A cancelled plan lingers in the mind. Not because every delay means something terrible. Often it doesn't. Life is busy, people get tired, messages get missed. Healthy relationships leave room for that reality. Still, the heart isn't always as logical as the mind, especially when someone matters. That's why you may notice a younger person asking questions that seem unrelated. How was your day? Did you get home okay? Are you feeling better? On the surface, they're ordinary questions. Underneath, they're asking something much harder to say. Am I still part of your world? And when that question quietly settles into someone's heart, something remarkable starts happening. Their biggest hope is no longer hearing the words, I love you. They begin hoping for something even more meaningful, something revealed not in a single conversation, but in the smallest habits you repeat without even realizing it. It's strange how love often hides inside routines. Not the dramatic ones, the quiet ones that almost seem too ordinary to matter. You wake up. Before checking the news, before thinking about work, someone crosses your mind. Not because you're trying to think about them, because your mind has started making them part of home. That word, home. People often imagine it's a place. Sometimes it becomes a person. Not someone who solves every problem, not someone who makes life perfect, just someone whose presence calms the noise inside your head. And when a younger person begins feeling that, it can be deeply unsettling. Because they weren't looking for peace. They expected excitement, butterflies, uncertainty, the rush of wondering what comes next. Instead, they find themselves smiling at something as simple as hearing your voice after a difficult day. At first, they don't even recognize what's happening. They wonder why your opinion suddenly matters more than it used to. Why your encouragement stays with them for hours. Why a single compliment feels different coming from you than from anyone else. They're not trying to hand you that power. It happens gradually. One conversation, then another. One shared laugh. One honest moment. One evening where they admitted something they usually keep hidden, and you didn't judge them. People remember that. Much longer than they remember clever words. There's a moment I've seen again and again. A younger person is out with friends. Everyone is laughing. The room is loud. Music is playing. From the outside, everything looks perfect. Then something funny happens. Instinctively, they reach for their phone. Not because they're bored, because for a split second, they wish you were seeing it too. They want to tell you. Not later, now. That's when affection quietly turns into emotional partnership, without anyone announcing it, without a conversation about labels. You become the person they naturally want to include, not out of obligation, out of desire. And that's a very different feeling. Sometimes men misunderstand this. They think being loved means constantly being needed. Often, healthy love doesn't create dependence. It creates inclusion. There's space for friends, for work, for family, for individual dreams. But through all of it, there's an invisible thread connecting two lives. A thought that quietly says, I wish you were part of this moment. That's one of the gentlest forms of love, and maybe one of the strongest. Because it isn't driven by fear, it's driven by joy. Still, no relationship stays in that feeling every day. Real people get distracted, stressed, overwhelmed. Some days conversations feel effortless, other days they're shorter. That's normal. The mistake happens when silence automatically gets translated into rejection. It doesn't always mean that. Sometimes someone is simply carrying more than they know how to explain. A younger person may even pull back for a while, not because they care less, because they're trying to understand emotions that arrived faster than expected. They ask themselves difficult questions. Is this real? Am I imagining this? What if he doesn't feel the same? Those questions don't disappear just because feelings become stronger. If anything, they become louder, because now the answer matters. I've watched people convince themselves to stop loving someone. They make lists. They focus on differences. They promise themselves they'll move on. Sometimes that's the healthiest choice. Sometimes circumstances truly don't fit. But something interesting often happens. They stop talking to everyone else about that person. Yet they keep having conversations with themselves over and over, as though the heart hasn't received the same message the mind is trying to deliver. That's why love can feel so confusing. Logic and emotion don't always walk at the same speed. One wants certainty. The other simply notices where it feels understood. And understanding, real understanding, is rarer than people think. Most of us spend years trying to appear impressive. Very few people make us feel safe enough to be ordinary, to admit we're tired, to laugh at our own mistakes, to sit in silence without wondering whether we're being judged. If a younger person begins finding that kind of peace with you, they may not even call it love at first. They'll just notice that every version of tomorrow somehow feels better if you're still in it. But there is one final shift. A shift so quiet that many people don't recognize it until much later. It's the moment when love stops asking, "How do I keep this person?" and begins asking something far more revealing. The question changes almost without anyone noticing. It stops being, "Will this person choose me?" and slowly becomes, "How can I make this person feel loved?" That shift is easy to miss because it isn't dramatic. There's no music, no perfect speech, no movie moment. It happens in the middle of ordinary life. You're tired after work. You mention you didn't sleep well. The next day they remember, not because they wrote it down, because your comfort quietly became important to them. That's one of the gentlest signs that affection has grown into something deeper. Attention is no longer about getting your approval. It's about caring for your experience. I've always found that beautiful, because real love in many cases doesn't become more selfish as it grows. It becomes more curious. "Are you okay? Did something happen? You seem quieter today." They're not asking because they expect a perfect answer. Sometimes they simply want to know whether your silence is carrying something heavy. And maybe you've experienced this from the other side. You were convinced nobody noticed you were struggling. Then one person looked at you and said, "You don't seem like yourself today." Those words stay with people, not because they're magical, because they reveal something every human being longs for: to be noticed. Not admired, not idealized, not placed on a pedestal, simply seen. That's often where love becomes strongest, not in excitement, in recognition. The younger person who once worried endlessly about saying the right thing now finds comfort in hearing your ordinary stories. The conversation no longer has to be unforgettable. Your presence already is. Think about that. How rare it is to meet someone with whom nothing extraordinary needs to happen for the day to feel meaningful. You could be walking through a grocery store, driving without speaking, watching rain fall against the window. And somehow, it feels enough. That doesn't mean every day is easy. Every relationship meets misunderstandings. People get impatient, they miss signals, they carry stress from places that have nothing to do with each other. Sometimes love looks incredibly graceful. Sometimes it looks like two imperfect people trying again after getting something wrong. That's why emotional maturity matters so much. Not because mature people never make mistakes, because they become willing to repair them. There's courage in saying, "I misunderstood you. I'm sorry. Help me understand what you meant." Those sentences don't weaken love. Very often they protect it. And perhaps that's the quiet truth hidden beneath everything we've talked about today. A younger person doesn't love more deeply simply because they're younger. Age alone doesn't decide the depth of a heart. What matters is the way someone chooses to show up, the honesty they bring, the consistency they offer, the respect they protect, the willingness to keep learning another person's inner world. Sometimes that younger person has cared before. Sometimes they've even believed they were in love. But every now and then, they meet someone who changes their understanding of what closeness actually feels like. Not because life suddenly becomes perfect, because for the first time, they don't feel they have to earn every moment of affection. They feel accepted. And acceptance has a quiet power. It allows people to breathe, to laugh a little louder, to admit fears they once buried, to imagine a future without forcing it. If someone ever looks at you with that kind of peace in their eyes, don't rush to label it. Don't assume you already know the ending. Stay curious. Listen closely. Notice the small things, the remembered details, the thoughtful pauses, the gentle concern, the way they make space for you inside an ordinary Tuesday. Because love, more often than not, doesn't arrive wearing a grand announcement. It slips into everyday life so softly that you almost miss it. Until one evening, you're sitting together in comfortable silence. Neither of you feels the need to fill it. The world keeps moving outside. Cars pass, phones buzz, time carries on. And somewhere deep inside, without either of you saying a single word, one quiet truth has already taken root. I don't just want moments with you anymore. I want my life to keep finding its way back to yours.